Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Baseball FM. As always, I am Frank here with the co host, Max. Max, how are we doing on this very fine day?
I'm doing good. It's starting to become summer outside, which means it's nice and hot, which means it's good weather. But at the same time, I'm sweating too much, so there's that. But hey, not much I can complain about.
Yeah, honestly, if I were you, with how the Phillies are playing, there's not a whole lot that you can say much about at this point. Everything's coming up Millhouse, everything's coming up Max Gilpatrick. Might as well roll right into it, into the May month of May recap in terms of records. Um, in the month of May, so far the Phillies are 11-4. 11-4, Max.
Hmm.
How you feeling about that?
We're never going to lose again. We're going to
Apparently,
win.
Zach
We're
Wheeler
going to
is
win that
absolutely
thing.
he's back to his absolute best after his elbow or his shoulder fell off. 11-4 takes you to 24-23. 8 games back of the Braves. Max, do you think that you will be able to catch the Braves by the end of the season, or do you think you're just going to kind of settle for a wild card one here, kind of vibe?
Well, I'd still win every game, but it's more likely than not the Braves are got this division in the bag. I think. I think it's just smart to. It's gonna be cheesy to say, just win as much as you can. Just get a playoff spot, really. Just fight for a playoff spot. It's not guaranteed. Just fight for it.
Yeah. The only other team in the month of May to have double-digit wins, the Tampa Bay Rays. I think people need to start learning the lesson. Never count the Rays out. They were called the Devil Rays for a reason. They have that devil magic. They are first in the American League East, the only team in the MLB other than the Braves to have 30 wins on the season. They are 3 games up on the Yankees for the division. Um, Max, what do you think's been working for the Rays so far this year?
I think just their whole strategy. I think Shane McClanahan's been looking very good. Looking back to his Cy Young self,
Mm.
uh, I think Chandler Simpson's been hitting the ball well, and I think especially Jose Caminero has been hitting the ball pretty well. This Rays team is full of a bunch of guys that. I mean, this was the case for some time, with the rare exceptions when we were younger, of Evan Longoria and Carl Crawford. There's a lot of people on the Rays that kind of flow under the radar. They're not, perennial AL Cy Young winners. They're not perennial AL MVP winners.
Mm.
But they still got great bats. They still got some all star caliber players. It's clear that whatever the Rays got cooking, they're not going to stop.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just about sort of the same blueprint as the Brewers last year, if you think about it. Just good fundamental baseball, the kind of baseball that I think every little league coach imagines their team playing. Um, Putting down bunts, everybody's making their plays in the field. Just sort of station to station, everything's linked together. There's not really one star other than like Junior Caminero, of course, and that lineup just continues to do enough to supplement their unique pitching abilities, especially with McClanahan's return to looks like ace form. Nick Martinez, of course, doing phenomenal so far this year. Drew Rasmussen following up his All Star campaign last year with another very solid year this year, and they have a few interesting prospects on the horizon as well. And who's to say the Rays just can't keep the perpetual motion machine going? Um, I think I've had enough of the talk about the positives, Max. Let's bring the people back down to earth and talk about some teams that are scuffling right now. We could talk about the Angels. We could talk about the Rockies, but that's a little boring. I think people largely expect that from them at this point. Let's talk about the Cincinnati Reds. In the month of May, they are 4-11. They are scuffling big time, and of course, this is in spite of Ellie De La Cruz looking like an MVP top five finisher again, and JJ Bleday bursting back onto the scene, reminding people what they were so excited about back in his A's days. If you remember JJ Bleday with the A's there, um, Sal Stewart of course keeps chugging along. been putting together a very solid campaign thus far, and Spencer Steer and guys like that have been doing pretty well. It's really the pitching that's let them down. Now, a lot of those losses were situational losses. The bullpen sort of blowing the lead. I think many people can look back and remember the Cubs series where they got walked off. I think it was either 2 or 3 nights in a row. I can't quite remember which one. Haven't really been able to find a reliable closer since Emilio Pagan went on the IL. So you know, whether it's Tony Santillan or Graham Ashcraft or whomever it is, they just can't seem to find any sort of rhythm in that bullpen. Max, are you at all worried about the Reds and their playoff chances at this point?
A little bit because you're seeing teams like the Cubs still dominant. You're still seeing teams like even though the Pirates got swept, they're still not a team that's to be trifled with, in my opinion. With still the pitching that they got, so they got some good hitters too, and especially with the Brewers, who are becoming more resurgent day after day. So I think that's definitely a big concern. NL Central is still one of my most top races in terms of the division and who makes the playoffs because all those teams, with the rare exception of the Cardinals, have deserve to be in the playoffs. So we'll see. It will be interesting to see, but it's not going to be easier for the Reds.
Yeah,
I will
absolutely.
say this though: when we spoke of the season predictions previews, the first episode we did this, we talked about how the offense is looking decent, but that starting pitching without Hunter Green is not looking ideal. Because last year there was not one Reds player that had an ERA of sub 4.20. Um, and the bullpen was looking shaky last year too. So I think they really need to do the pitching. Do I think they'll get some pitching by the trade deadline? Perhaps. I think there's some opportunities you can get some guys there. But they really just gotta focus more, not necessarily on the hitting, but as you said, situational bullpens. Yeah, those happen, but they can't happen every game that you're playing.
Now, I think Chase Burns has done a more than adequate job of filling in for the absence of Hunter Green here, but I'm glad they have Nick Lodolo back. As you know, I'm quite fond of Nick Lodolo after I dubbed him the next Chris Sale a couple of years ago. Hasn't quite lived up to the hype just yet, but um, I love what he brings to the table. He's been roughed up a bit in his first two starts back from the IL, but overall, I think it's a positive thing to have them back. Um, but like guys like Rhett Lauder, and you could talk about they brought in Chris Paddock to solve their problems, I guess, like just a live arm of some kind. But he's been awful for several years now. He's the Taiwan Walker of the NL Central. It's gotten to the point where I just think they seem like they've run out of ideas when it comes to starting pitching. They just need guys to stay and get healthy. Whether that's Hunter Green, whether that's Rhett Lauder, finding some rhythm in the big leagues, and it's disappointing to say the least because I love my guy Terry Francona and I want all the good things to happen to him. But yeah, that's I mean I think the blame, of course, squarely lies with the starting pitching. But Max, talk about a team that had everything going for them in the starting pitching department, and yet somehow they find themselves 4-10 in the month of May, currently sitting second to last in the AL Central, 20-27, the same record as the Kansas City Royals. The Detroit Tigers have been scuffling, most notably since Tarek Skubal went on the IL, which looks like it's going to be a 3 month stay on the IL, if nothing else. Casey Mize, they just got back from the IL, but Verlander remains out. Framber Valdez is back from his accidental beanball, apparently. Um, but, you have guys like Ty Madden, who is looking like he was resurging, finding some resurgence on his prospect pedigree a little bit in a sort of follower role a la Brian Bayo. But he got hit in the arm with a comebacker, so he's out now.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot to look at with this team and a lot to talk about. There's some encouraging signs on the offensive front. I mean, Riley Green starts to find a foothold. Kevin McGonigal has been one of the better hitters in the American League this year, and as a rookie even. but they find themselves 7 games below 500. Do you expect a comeback to materialize once everybody comes back healthy in that rotation, or do you think this is going to be a sort of gap year for the Tigers?
It's kind of looking like a gap year, which really shouldn't, because you can't control injuries, of course, but especially when Tarek Skubal is in his contract here, especially. And he's had so much expectation. I think this Tigers team in general,
Mm-hmm.
ever since the offseason, they've had a lot of expectations, but they really do need that pitching. They're starting to have, they have a Dodgers problem where all their pitching gets injured. You think their offense can step it up a bit, but their offense hasn't as a whole stepped up a bit. Torkelson, I think at the beginning of late April, early May, he started off to the season pretty bad, but he's been looking somewhat better, but he's got to step it up. I don't expect somebody like Javi Baez to have a magical run like he did last year and make the All Star team, like,
Mm.
when we were in high school in 16 when he was on the Cubs. But it really does not look great for Detroit. I don't think that Framber Valdez contract's going to look great either. You want Casey Mize to come back to what he was looking like a year or two ago, but I mean, look, it's he just got off the IL. It's going to take some time to nurse that injury. I think this is he started off the year on the IL, and he's been making his season debut, I think, very recently, if I'm not mistaken. So he started off on the IL. A lot of these pitchers that have started off on the IL haven't seen a old man Justin Verlander around in some time, so he's probably going to face some more time on the IL. But at the end of the day, what are you really looking for with Justin Verlander? This is not even his old Tiger self. Obviously, this is not his 2022 Astros self when he won the Cy Young. It's kind of a similar fall off to what Scherzer's been looking like in Toronto. So I don't think they're going to do much better. I don't think they're going to be god awful. They may finish with a winning record, but I don't see how at this point they're going to make the playoffs. But the AL is so wide open, you never know.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some players here, Max. Let's talk about
I
some.
just want to talk about a team that's also not doing so great.
I'm sure we'll get to it, Max. I'm sure we will.
I can't wait anymore. I've been looking forward to
Or the
this.
people can tune in on Thursday when we have our annual Rageathon. At least for me, because I got
Oh, you
plenty of
got me
things
in
to
the end,
say.
though. I had a great time, and you got me in the end because you had to make that snarky comment.
Listen, I'm not gonna let the Phillies and Red Sox dominate this one just yet, but
That's a fair point.
I'm sure something will come up um, to the point where I'm sure my brain's gonna explode at some point. Um, but let's talk about the best hitters since we last recorded a general podcast. So we're talking about a week's worth of baseball here. The title of this podcast, this is episode 9, as you can see below. Holy Sheets. My man Don Orsello. Oh, Captain, my Captain, please come back. I miss him so much. Now I'm
He ain't
sad.
coming back. He loves the sun in San Diego.
But I say holy sheets, Max. And I say this for good reason. 1.438. Do you know what that number is, Max?
Is that his
We're
OPS?
talking about a 1438.
It could
That
be his
is
OPS.
that is Gavin Sheets' slugging percentage for the last week. His OPS is 2177.
21?
2177. In 23 plate appearances, he has 4 home runs, 10 hits, 8 RBIs, add a stolen base onto that, Max, including at the time of recording last night where he slugged a couple of homers. This guy has been a man possessed. Now, I don't want to say nothing about the old White Sox regimes, but these guys had Gavin Sheets and Andrew Vaughn just rotting on their bench in the worst team of all time. And I think they're both pretty happy with where they are now, despite, and we'll talk about them later, despite the White Sox recent resurgence here. To go along with Gavin Sheets in his absolutely nuclear week, we have a couple of familiar names although maybe not household names completely. Corbin Carroll is second with a 1502 OPS. He is hitting 421 with a 607 OBP over the last week. I should have mentioned, by the way, Gavin Sheets is batting a cool 625 in the last week. So that's pretty incredible. Corbin Carroll has 2 homers, 4 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, 3 doubles over that span as well. You know who's been hitting the crap out of the ball though, Max? I mean, absolutely cranking it. Dalen Lyle of the Washington Nationals tied for the lead with Schwarber and Sheets for home runs over the last week with 4 to go along with 10 RBI, also tying the lead over the last week. He's hitting 385 with a 1255 OPS over the last week. And I will just give a mention to one of my favorite players of the last decade, Luis Arraez, who is hitting a lovely 435 with a 536 OBP, a 1318 OPS, with 2 home runs, 2 RBIs, a couple of doubles, but 2 home runs for Luis Arraez, considering he went into this week with 0. That's pretty incredible, honestly, if you ask me. I love me some Luis Arraez. Any of those names sort of jogging any bells for you, Max?
Yeah, I think as a whole, the Giants have not been looking great. But as soon as someone like Luis Arias starts cooking, then I think the hopium comes back for him. Sheets has been incredible. I'm sure we're going to get to him at some point later on. But Sheets has just been on an absolute tear right now. Jordan Lyle with the Nationals been fun to watch. The Nationals team actually has not been playing as badly as we thought.
Mm-hmm.
We thought this was a team that's going to be looking like the 2010 Nationals before they went on that run 9 years after that. But no, this Nationals team has actually been looking somewhat fun to watch. Those are my thoughts right now, I think specifically, but wow, oh, wow, oh, wow, Gavin Sheets. It's good to see, Luis Ariz, is not just hitting for contact. I think he's kind of, doing like a Josh Donaldson with a swing almost, when you, as opposed to just barreling straight through it and going through the ball, you're kind of lifting it up as a launch angle type. I think his launch angles have been looking a bit different due to those 2 home runs, obviously. But no, players are fun to watch. Holy sheets, yeah, Gavin has been incredible. I remember that call when Orsello made it. I think it was last month when the Rockies are actually looking somewhat decent, and then the Padres just walked it off twice in a row. I think that's really when it started for him.
Yeah. I personally am very happy to see Corbin Carroll hitting the ball like we know that he can. MVP
My fantasy
caliber
team loves it.
talent. Yeah. MVP caliber talent. He's doing exactly what we want him to do, right? 3 doubles, 2 home runs, 4 RBIs, couple of steals, just putting the ball all around the park. The Diamondbacks haven't had too much to cheer for this year, but Corbin Carroll I think is one of the easiest guys to root for in the game right now. I love the way he
Yeah.
plays. I love how much power he derives from his frame, and quite honestly, I hope he stays healthy and continues to rake for the rest of the year. Let's move on to some pitchers now, Max.
Uh huh.
Um, by the way, obviously hitter of the week, Gavin Sheets. You can see that right up there. Pitcher of the week, on the other hand, as you can see right there, the man you are very familiar with, Max, Mr. Wheeler Dealer himself, Zach Wheeler. His shoulder fell off the bone, but he is back, dialing it up at 97 miles per hour on average in his last start. In his last 14 and a third, which encompasses the last week since we recorded, .63 ERA. Max, how ecstatic are you to see Zach Wheeler back to dominating like we know he can?
Well, there's two things. One, I'm happy he's on my fantasy team. Um,
Yeah, I wonder how
and
that happened.
two, I wonder how it happened. We'll never know. I guess we'll never know. Second, I was very glad to see him in person start, and that was he looked fantastic. He looked like his old Zach Wheeler self. This is like
Yeah.
Roy
Dude,
Halladay for
40,
me.
46 pitches in the sixth inning in that game that you went to, by the way. Just
I
46,
know it was quick and
obliterating the
efficient.
Red
I couldn't
Sox
leave
off the
for beer.
mound.
I had to stay and watch, but it was incredible. No, he's been looking dominant, especially like that start he made against the Pirates this week. Just pure filth. That was a great. Was it him versus Skeens? No, I think it was Sanchez versus Skeens.
Yeah.
Because Sanchez had 13 strikeouts,
Complete
but
game
Wheeler still looked
shutty.
great.
Complete game shutty, 13 Ks. One of the best games I've seen pitched all year, if
Hell
not the
yeah, brother.
best.
Well, Philly's got that dog in him when it comes to starting pitching, but he
They're
has
starting to
been
bark. They're
incredible.
starting to bark.
You doubted. I will say this. You kind of doubted Wheeler at the start of the
To be
year.
fair
You
though,
were
like
like,
you
"Oh,
see
his
what
shoulder." No, no, that you're
you see
talking
what's
about my
happening
team.
to
You're talking about
you
my
see what's
Philly
happening to
player.
Woodruff right now. Woodruff had the exact same procedure, and he's on the IL again. So
But
I
Woodruff
think
ain't got that dog in him
I
like
think it
Zach
was fair to
Wheeler.
worry. Yeah,
Zach
but
Wheeler, anyways. I will not take any more Zach Wheeler slander. In my humble opinion, if he keeps it up, he's getting them Cy Young votes. He might not win it, but he's
yeah,
still got it.
yeah,
I will say this: Wheeler, when he had that last contract with the Phillies,
mm-hmm.
he said that that's probably his last one. So we're going to appreciate Wheeler as much as possible. Hopefully, he ends it on top in the next year or two when the contract expires. But he has been looking absolutely dominant as he has been his entire career. It's a shame that obviously he wasn't too healthy last year. I think he had a really good
Yeah.
shot at winning the Cy Young, but that's all we got Sanchez for. I'm sure he's next on the list, but I'm very happy about Wheeler. I could not be more ecstatic that Wheeler is back at 100%.
Yeah. Well, you want to talk about how happy you are for Wheeler?
Yeah.
It's not a coincidence I'm wearing my Blue Jays jersey, Max. It's not a coincidence I got Big Maple right there. Talking about Canadian boy himself, Mike Soroka. Last 12 innings pitched of last week, 1.5 ERA. Man, Max, this is a former top prospect with the Atlanta Braves. A man who showed so much promise early in his career before injuries completely derailed any sort of helium that he had. And now he's finding it again in the desert. He's took some peyote in Arizona, and now he's dialed in. He's spotting all his pitches. He's looking like an absolute ace. Possible all-star caliber season he's putting together, and I would be so excited for this guy, honestly, because he's someone that's it almost feels like he's been in like Korea or Japan, but he's been in the big leagues this whole time. But everybody sort of forgot about him. He's been pitching in the Nationals bullpen, the Cubs, and a bunch of other organizations where he's just not really found all that much success. He's shown flashes, but he's really starting to put it all together this year, and honestly, I could not be more excited. Another guy that I like looks like the kind of guy that, you know, works behind the desk in the deep south at a convenience store and builds his own go karts from scratch. I'm talking about Grant Holmes, of course. 10 innings pitched, 1.8 ERA, including an absolute dissection of the Red Sox lineup. Color me shocked.
There it is.
That those are the top 3 pitchers for the week though. And honestly, I love Grant Holmes. I mean, he's more of a long reliever than he is a starter, but there's something about his pitch mix that I find very alluring, and I can't really put my finger on it, but I like him a lot. Plus, he looks like Andrew Chafin's long lost brother of some description or another. But anyway, Max, let's get
Him
into
and
the
Country Breakfast, Billy Butler. Those are
yeah.
the three amigos right there.
Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this here podcast, shall we?
Yeah, but first I have my own little notes.
Okay.
I made a special presentation. Whenever I make a presentation for baseball, it's like Ringo writing a song for the Beatles. It really is unique for me. Um, so I was doing some little research, and top 5 ERA in the American League so far to start off the year. Number one is the New York Yankees. No shocker there at 329. My boy Cam Schlittler has been holding the front for
Yeah.
them. Number two, my other boy, Nate Eovaldi, with the Rangers. Team ERA at 354. The Tampa Bay Rays, who we discussed at the top of the hour, is at 359. The Mariners, no one's really been talking too much about them. Their pitching Well, not as dominant. I think it's kind of been baked in for the Mariners now for the past few years. They still got a hell of aces. They got 3.75 ERA in the AL, and at number five is should be no surprise. It is the Boston Red Sox at a 3.81 ERA. Top five ERA in the NL, and this is a pretty crazy number to think of. The Atlanta Braves have a top five ERA right now. They're number one. They have a 2.94 team ERA as we speak. At 321, it's the Dodgers at number two. Number three is the Brewers, 329. That starting pitching is looking really well. Number four, the record doesn't say otherwise, but the way that they've been playing, it's been crazy. The Mets have an ERA of 3.76 right now. And at number five, to round it off, it's the Buccos. It's the Pittsburgh Pirates at 3.88. So those are the teams that are doing really well in terms of the pitching side of things. Big shocker for me. Not too much of a shocker. I would say the Mets because that record doesn't show otherwise. Their offense has been doing great, but that pitching's been really holding up the front so far.
Yeah, I think that's what happens when you have a guy like Noah McLean leading the line there.
Potential rookie of the year, Noah McLean.
Wilson Contreras bombs away into the waterfall.
Bombs away for
2-0 to
Wilson
the
Contreras.
Sox. We
The
fucking
waterfall. They in
suck,
Kansas
but
City?
we're not the worst in the world.
Are they in Kansas City?
They are indeed in Kansas City.
You should win that series. The Royals aren't looking too hot.
One would think so.
One would think, but you probably make Vinny Pasquantino look like prime Barry Bonds out there.
It's only if Brian Bayo is starting.
Well, let's pray he doesn't this series.
No.
Oh
boy. Oh boy. All right.
All right, let's round off the stop of the podcast. That's enough of me yapping.
We're gonna talk about the White Sox a little bit here, Max. I hope you don't
Right on.
mind. I hope you don't mind.
I don't mind. Frankie White Sox, #1 fan.
There's a lot of things to say about this here White Sox team. Honestly, I can't really tell what the expectations were going into the year. It is a little sort of disingenuous to say that people were expecting them to be better. I think it's almost impossible for them to be worse than they were the last couple of years. But I think people were sort of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, right? You had guys like Kyle Teal, Munetaka Murakami, Colson Montgomery. You bring in guys who maybe add a little bit of flair and a little bit of poise, perhaps, with Chase Mydroth, for example, and you sort of expect a leap forward for a couple of guys, you know, maybe Miguel Vargas, who showed a little bit of a sign of life, and you have guys like Grant Taylor, who could be the potential ace closer for that team. I mean, I love Grant Taylor. I wish they would just stop fucking around with Sir Anthony Dominguez and just give him the closer job already, because his stuff is just off the charts.
It worked out for us
Yeah, well,
not so long ago.
this is the time for the White Sox to start showing people what they're made of, right?
Time
Right
for
now
Andrew
they are
Benintendi to get back.
second in the American League Central, one game back of the Guardians. They are 24-22. That really only says one thing to me, Max. They're in this. They're in the playoffs right now. They are sniffing October. But I think it's a little. I'm being a little broad right now. I'm being a little
Yeah,
sort
bit too
of
early.
being a little broad. Let's zoom in a little bit here, right? Let's look at their stats on the year so far, right? They have 64 home runs on the year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Last year total they hit da, 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 six. No, hold on. Sorry, hold on. Technical difficulties. Total they hit 165. So we're not even 2 months into the season, and they're 100 home runs off of the pace for last year. right? Let's go a different direction here, shall we? The team batting average right now is 239, right? Team batting average from last year, 232. Okay, pretty much in line. But the team slugging this year so far is 414. The team slugging last year, 373. The team OPS this year, 741. Team OPS last year, 675. You get my point. Obviously, this is extrapolating big number, small number. There's always room for a fall off there. But I think we're seeing a lot of very promising steps forward. A guy like Colson Montgomery, Miguel Vargas, Munetaka Murakami, all guys showing real upside here with the bat. Not to mention a guy like Chase Mydroth showing how valuable he is as a middle infielder for this team. We're seeing a guy like Davis Martin putting together a very solid campaign thus far. Really, the only thing that I can see stopping them right now is their starting pitching. If Davis Martin stops pitching as effectively as he has been, and he sort of reverts, then you have like Sean Burke, Davis Martin, Eric Fetty. Not exactly where you want to be right now, right? Do you think the White Sox are a buyer at the deadline if they maintain this sort of course that they're on right now?
Oh yeah, especially in their last 30 days. You mentioned some of it, but in the last month, they've been looking like the best offense in all of baseball. They're first in OPS at 823. They're first in home runs at 48. As you said, they're first in RBIs at 140. They're first in on base percentage at 350, and they're first in slugging at 423. The only thing that they're second on, but not by much, is their 261 team average. So they're looking like a really good White Sox team in general. Let's talk about the numbers. Murakami, when you see the batting average alone at 235, doesn't really stand out. However, the man has 17 home runs already. He has had multiple games where he's been hitting two plus home runs. That is insane. And he has a 934 OPS. He's looking really good to start off the year. He's potentially looking like an AL rookie of the year. Hell, he's probably going to get some MVP votes. He's really that good. Colson Montgomery's been starting off the year pretty well too. He's got a 238 average, a 345 on base percentage, and a 524 slugging. He's also been really good in the field too. He's a really good shortstop. Miguel Vargas, all red. When we go to Baseball Savant, he's the third baseman for the White Sox. All red in Savant.
He's my
He's
guy.
also
You
hitting
guys can have Colson. You guys can have Minataka. Give me some Miguel. I love me some
for
Miguel
sure.
Vargas.
For sure. And he's hitting 247, 374, and a 506 slug, and not bad at all, in my opinion. And I think on the pitching side, there's not really much to come out. But for me, I think it's a really bit with Sean Newcomb. He's got a 260 ERA. Granted, that's in 27.2 innings. But I mean, hey, when you are on the White Sox and you have a sub 3 ERA, that's good in my book.
Mm. You always want a guy like him who can come and make a spot start if he needs to, but he's also holding down important innings in the bullpen. You really need a guy who anchors that that sort of handoff from the rotation to the bullpen. And not to make it about the Red Sox again, but like you look at a team like the Red Sox, where on the rare occasions they do have the lead when they hand off the baton from the starter, and you have a guy like Greg Weissert or Ryan Watson, or you know whoever else we want to mention, and you see what happens to these leads as they just evaporate. It's what's happening with the Reds in the month of May, right?
Or me with Tanner Banks.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think every fan base can point to a guy out of their bullpen and say he's just not
David
stepping
Bednar
it
has
up.
not had a good weekend at
No,
all.
exactly. And I think a guy like Sean Newcomb does that job perfectly. And what leads that the White Sox do have, either they hit a few more home runs or they make the pass off there.
Didn't he used to pitch for Boston?
Yeah, he did.
Oh, what happened?
We cut him. We DFA'd him, and he
Oh,
ended up
gee,
with
I
the
wonder
A's.
why.
Yeah, I always liked him. I don't know why. I don't know why we got rid of him, if I'm honest. But he's a local boy. He's from Massachusetts, so you know. a pox on the house of the Red Sox, is what I say. But
He's Sean from Ravia. I don't know where he's from.
but Max, we sort of briefly touched on them earlier. Let's talk about the San Diego Padres a little bit.
Yeah,
I don't really know what people were expecting out of this team going into the year. I think people were expecting a little bit of a step back, if we're honest. Their pitching rotation has been looking really sort of like going into the season. I mean, was looking really shaky. It was Randy Vasquez and Nick Pivetta were like slated to be the de facto aces of this team, and I think a lot of people were feeling kind of nervous about that, understandably so. But and you can talk about you can also talk about the um the trio of struggling supposed stars for San Diego, right? Jackson Merrill, Manny Machado, and Fernando Tatis. And despite all of these things, they are a half a game back of the Dodgers in the NL West right now. They are 28-18. Now, in order for this to be successful, they're let's be straight right now. They were going to have to rely on Mason Miller to get every single save opportunity he possibly could, right? And he's done that. He's done that thus far. He's an incredible closer. Probably will get Cy Young votes. Honestly, I mean, theoretically, if the Padres end up making the playoffs, we could see a reliever win the Cy Young for the first time in a long time. I don't think that's out of the question here.
that's
But
what that's Mo, right? Or was it Eppersley?
that's a good question. I honestly don't know the last time that happened. I mean, I can think back to like the '80s when they were giving it out
Yeah.
for fun, but let's talk about the Padres pitching so far. Cumulative 401 innings pitched, a 3.93 ERA. They have surrendered 346 hits in those 401 innings, struck out 393. They are pitching much better than I think anybody really expected at this point. And a lot of that is anchored by Randy Vasquez taking a step forward in his career. And of course Mason Miller, but you look at that whole bullpen: Jeremiah Estrada, Bradley Rodriguez, and this is all without Robert Suarez, of course. And like there's a lot of guys that are showing a significant step forward, like Gavin Sheets, right? Where I think a lot of people are sort of looking at that and saying he's a nice bench piece. He's not going to be much. But like I said earlier in the episode, over a 2100 OPS in the last week. They're just finding ways to win these games, Max. What is your
Yeah.
overall takeaway from the Padres?
I mean, Gavin Sheets specifically, and since the start of the year, has been hitting a 262 average, a 9 home runs. He's going to, on the year, an 896 OPS, which is also something very good. But I think in terms of where I'm looking at, this bullpen, I think, is clearly the best in baseball, and I don't think it's very close. You mentioned Rodriguez, you mentioned everybody else. I think David Morgan's also been looking quite good himself, pretty decently, been holding down the fort. Yeah, Mason Miller has 44 strikeouts in 21 innings. He has an 0.86 ERA. I just saw a report. It wasn't from John Heyman or John Morosi, but it was somebody like him on MLB Network and on or MLB.com rather. Mason Miller is, the Padres are in talks with Mason Miller. He might get his next deal. He might make 300 million, which is the most a reliever in baseball history, and I think he's well worth the money if he keeps that up. At the end of the day, I think for me, it has been not really the rotation, but specifically that bullpen has been really holding down the fort. And that bullpen and that offensive bullpen looked really good against the Mariners last night for Sunday Night Baseball. So it's really been a tale of the bullpen. And you know, and the most important thing in baseball, I think, for me, is not just scoring runs. Obviously, it's making sure you're getting guys outs, and this Padres team has been doing an exceptional job at that.
Yeah, I mean, you have a guy like Michael King who's been pitching excellently, Randy Vasquez who's been pitching excellently. It almost sort of overshadows the fact that they have Walker Bueller and Lucas Giolito in their rotation right now, and yet they're somehow
Uh-huh.
still finding a way to win games. And to be honest, I was bullish on them entering the playoffs last year. They let me down significantly, but this is why, right? You give this bullpen a lead, any lead, 1 run, 10 runs, -3 runs, they're gonna find a way to keep you in the game and win you the game, right? And honestly, if I was a Padres fan, I would be even more excited because you're doing all this without Tatis, without Machado, without Merrill being at their usual level, right? Tatis still hasn't hit a home run this year. I don't think he's a bad hitter, to be very clear. I love
No, his
watching
stats are looking
Tatis
decent.
Jr. And there's nothing really that you can say about this lineup where the answer I should say, you can't say anything negative about this lineup without the answer being they're doing this without Jake Cronenworth, and their big three are struggling mightily, and they're still winning games. This rotation is not going anywhere, to be clear.
Yeah.
It's a
I mean,
very,
and
very,
look,
very good
Xander's been
rotation.
having not a bad year at all. I mean, it's not lights out stuff, but he's really been a solid player, and his defense is looking really good. A gentleman and a scholar, Manny Machado, has been not looking too hot, but we'll see how he does the rest of the year. Jackson Merrill has been a very big disappointment. I had high expectations for him. I think he's only hitting like 147 or 175, something like that. He's not seeing the ball very well. In spite of that, you were right. The Padres, I think it was overlooked a bit with their bullpen. I mean, it's really been lights out. I don't think you expected the start. I sure as hell did not expect the start, but I'm more than happy for San Diego
Yeah, one of the
because
premier
that's what's in.
baseball cities out there, and one of the best stadium atmospheres, in my opinion. They sell out every night. Great loyal fan bases. They just got a new owner. Hopefully, he does them justice. Hopefully, he does Peter Seidler, uh, God rest his soul, justice in that he's actually willing to spend to put a winning product on the team. And back AJ Preller in his absolutely ludicrous mind, who just wheeling and dealing all the time. Um, yeah, I mean those are two teams that we haven't really talked about much: the White Sox and Padres, and they've been looking excellent this year relative to expectations. So I'm very happy for them, very happy for their fan base, and long may it continue. Down with the Dodgers, Viva la Padres, etc. Um, this is another topic that I know we were sort of talking about earlier, Max, and it's certainly something worth mentioning. The rash of elbow injuries, I think, to pitchers this year in particular it's been bad even by modern baseball standards. You know, I was putting together a list of guys that are on the IL for some sort of either shoulder or elbow, arm soreness, whatever it is. I'm gonna read you a list of what I deem to be the best players or best pitchers, I should say, that are currently injured. Corbin Burns, right?
Mhm.
Spencer Schwellenbach, AJ Smith Shawver, Hurston Waldrop, Ryan Helsley, Dean Kramer, Cade Povich, Zach Eflin, and of course we got Garrett Crochet, Yohan Oviedo, Justin Steele, Shelby Miller, Cade Horton, and Hunter Green. Chase Dollander just went on the IL. Tarek Skubal, of course. Justin Verlander. You could argue about his viability, but he's still a very good player. Jackson Jobe, who was a top prospect for the Tigers not that long ago. Hunter Brown, Josh Hader. I mean, you could make a laundry list of the guys that the Astros have on the IL right now. Chris Bubich, Cole Reagans, right? I mean, Yusei Kikuchi and Blake Snell just went back on the IL after just being off of it. Robbie Snelling, he made his debut like a week ago. He's already on the IL with UCL problems. Brandon Woodruff is back on the IL. Quinn Priester's on the IL. Ugh, Mick Abel. Kodai Senga is just back on the IL. It's a back problem though, so we don't count him. You know, I mean, I could go on and on with the list. Garrett Cole, who's almost back. Max Fried just went on the IL. You know, of course, Jared Jones is on the IL for the Pirates. Like I could continue to go on here, but you get the point, right? There's just a whole rash of very important arms. I sort of have a two-fold question here for you, Max. If you were a prospective playoff team, would you spend big money on an ace pitcher? And is there anything the MLB can do to protect pitchers, either from themselves or from just simply the act of pitching with the amount of violence that the modern game requires?
Well, first, Garrett Cole, you could be on the AL as long as you want. Stay there. Don't come back, please. You should have signed my baseball 15 years ago. That's me being incredible. But I think to answer some of your questions there, it kind of reminds me of a quote I think that you may have seen Chris Bassett say it a couple years ago when we are really seeing a lot of this stuff happen. It was guys are throwing the baseball a lot harder. And I do think too, in some respects, not to say that it's a bad thing or to say it's a good thing. Um, the MLB really cracking down on the spider track and some of the other substances that pitchers have been getting away with. I think some of that could be just them, not to defend them by any means. They did do that stuff, but I think that probably helped them with the pitch grips and gripping a ball. Because I imagine gripping a ball so many times without rosin or out anything that they're so used to it can do something. Um, I think it's the result of them throwing. But no one has been throwing a baseball harder in terms of this current class of pitchers than we've seen so far. No one has had before, even after the sticky stuff was banned, much higher rate of spin rate. And obviously, when you throw that hard consistently, and when you're spinning the ball that much consistently, that's going to do a lot of wear and tear, not just on your shoulder, definitely your elbow. That's going to do a lot of it. We're not seeing a lot of the pitchers. There's really not a lot of pitchers left that are like, the Gray Maxes back in the day. Randy Johnson and Roger Clemens can do that because their body was able to do that. I think in some ways, a lot of the pitchers' bodies they're kind of forcing them to themselves to do that. So I do think there's that. I think based on how the MLB market is, you're still going to see a lot of guys who have had elbow issues. I still think Tarek Skubal is going to sign a massive deal. I still think Spencer Swallenbach is still a decent pitcher, and when he gets back on in regular season at any time, he's going to look pretty good. But it's still not going to stop, what they're doing with their elbows. So I do think the current market that we're in terms of MLB free agents, that's not going to go away. And in terms of what baseball can do, I really think that if baseball were to clamp their foot down, it's going to be a lot of very unpopular decisions, probably on par with some of the decisions we've seen. I think 10 years ago when guys were stepping out of the box, it's like, oh, that's enforceable. It's like, oh, not really. Um, this could be. This is something that's probably not even talked about, but a thought that comes to mind is, hey, maybe you limit some. Maybe MLB puts a hard cap on how many curveballs you throw, or a hard cap on the amount of off speed that you're doing. They're not going to do that. I think it really has to be from a top down level from the pitching staff saying, "Hey," because at the end of the day, and we were taught this in Little League. What the hell do we know? I was nowhere close to being a major league player, but the big things that I think are big for pitchers is pitch location and changing speeds. Anybody in baseball, anybody and their mother in professional baseball could hit a 102 mile per hour fastball, but you got to change it up. But I think some of the things that they use, or some of the pitching windups, or any of the like the slants, you know what I mean. Some guys throw more three quarters nowadays. That's going to be a lot of wear and tear. I remember, watching 10 years ago on Emily Network when Chris Sale first went down, um, and on the White Sox, they were really going over like, hey, his windup is just like you're slinging that thing. That's going to be a lot of wear and tear on the elbow and the shoulder. So maybe guys aren't meant to throw like that if their body's not corresponding. You know what I mean? I don't mean to be like an anatomy lesson here, but I think that's just some of the trends we've been seeing. We're not seeing a lot of those workhorse pitchers anymore. And I think as a result, pitchers are not going as deep because there's a hard count sometimes on their pitching limit. You're not going to see a lot of guys throw. I mean, it used to happen a lot when we were younger, but this is just the nature of the game changing. Of going in 9 innings, this is the ninth inning, and they're already at 130 pitches. You're not going to see that. Some guys go 75 and they're like, "Yep, you're done. We're not gonna fuck up your arm or anything." It's like, but you're paying them though to be in these
Mm.
situations, but their arm just can't handle it. So I don't know if you agree or disagree, but those are just some of the trends and some of the research that I've been seeing, just in terms of
Yeah,
the
I mean,
fact that like if you throw that hard and too much, it's obviously going to have a strain on your body.
this is the thing. You you can't put the genie back in the bottle when it comes to velocity, right? Players seem to understand at this point. That's how you get noticed, right? That's how you get scouted in this league. You light up the radar. Now, you can make the argument for a more nuanced scouting ability, but I trust the scouts. I trust the analytics. I'm sure they could find. It's not pure velocity. It's about other things, right? When you're scouting a Dominican from, that league, I don't really know how else you would go about it, right? But a sort of thought occurred, and this might be a little bit controversial, but this was sort of something that I noticed late last year with Crochet, and this season with Peyton Tully. Obviously, because I'm a Red Sox fan, it's the team that I pay attention to the most, right? These guys pitch significantly better when they have an extra day rest. So here's my proposal, Max: mandatory 6-man rotation. Every team has to have a 6-man rotation. Now that might not be the most popular, right? That might not be the ultimate solution, but I think just having that extra day of rest is going to help significantly with the rehab and the sort of ability to relax the arm. Now, obviously, it changes the strategy of things. Obviously, it makes things a little bit more difficult. Now, there's probably ways that you can circumvent it. Use an opener on the fifth day so that you could put your starting pitcher in behind him or something like that, right? But I think at any given time, every team should be required to have 6 starters in a rotation. Some of these guys pitching on 4 days rest, some of these guys pitching on 3 days rest in the playoffs sometimes, right? That's going to be a significant wear on your arm, and you're just not going to have enough time for those sort of muscles to maintain their shape and maintain their ability to spring back and forth as such as they do. So I was wondering what your thoughts on that would be, Max.
That's not a bad idea, but I think I'm not sure how many teams would be willing to do that. I think the Dodgers would be more than willing to do that because they already have a lot of starting pitching. I think the Red Sox can benefit greatly. How many starting besides all those guys? What happened to Tanner Houck and Cutter Crawford? They still have Patrick Sandoval on there. I think those guys could once those guys come back, they could
I mean,
potentially benefit
to
from that.
accommodate this, you could take the roster size up to 27. That's pretty easy.
You could
They
do
do
that,
that. They
but I
do that for
think it
double headers as it is.
yeah, but I mean, there might be some ramifications. I'm not opposed to that, but I also think that MLB baseball will be wise to try to get more ahead of this, to realize, okay, these guys are going to get injured way too fast. We got to do something about it. We don't want to limit their skill, clearly, because these are, some of the best pitchers we're going to see. Like, these are the best players of our pitchers of our generation. These are guys who are going to win Cy Youngs. These are guys who are going to be in Cooperstown in, 20 years' time, getting their Hall of Fame plaque. Um, but at the same time, the biggest thing, though, in terms of protecting players and what they don't like, what they're grateful for, is you got to protect the players themselves. I do think that the 6-man rotation does do that to some extent. Um, so I think those are the big thing. I don't think that's a bad idea, but I do think that MLB's got to do something about this to stop this because this is not sustainable.
No, absolutely not. I think at this point, the path forward is not to limit the players themselves. It's more so to play the role of the father, the big brother, and protect these guys from themselves, right?
Yeah,
And I think making sure that they have the extra day of rest because these guys are professional. These are guys are gamers, right? They're always going to want to pitch when the chips are down, or at least they should, right?
yeah.
And if you told Garrett Crochet to pitch back to back days, he absolutely would. You look at the 2014 World Series with Madison Bumgarner, right? That guy was pitching like fucking 9 days in a row, because the game was on the
Randy
line.
Johnson
You
in
you
2001, game
asked them to
6,
do
threw
it.
120 pitches, and he came into game 7.
You asked them to
You're
do
not
that,
going to
they're
see
gonna
that.
Yamamoto even last year,
Yeah,
right? You ask them to do it, they'll do it. But you want to see these guys at their best, and the only way to do that is to give them adequate rest. Now, some teams already do 6-man rotations. That's the thing. And like, is there enough talent out there to make a 6-man rotation work for every team? Absolutely not. But that's the risk you take, right? Like, this is what's happening right now is unsustainable. When half of your aces out there are on the IL by July, what's the point? Seriously, like, how can you get excited about any pitcher? I'm just
yeah.
counting down the days, knock on wood, that Paul Skeens goes on the IL with Tommy John, or Nolan McLean goes on the IL with Tommy John, or as much as I loathe
Christopher
the guy
Sanchez,
personally,
that would gut me.
as much as I loathe the guy personally, it's a shame if Cam Schlittler goes on the IL, and that one honestly seems the most likely because this is a guy that's added like 5 miles per hour since he got drafted, right? That there's only so much that your arm can take doing that. And Peyton Tolley is another guy that worries me. I'm going to knock on wood several times for this, but he's added several ticks to his fastball since he was drafted, right? And that's a lot of strain to put on a guy's arm. And it's I've heard guys talk about having that like that the day off, right, where they have that extra day of rest and how much of a difference that makes. It's like, why not just make this the thing? Why not just say you have to have 5 days of rest between starts, right? And then when you have that regimented routine, and you can, let's just say for the sake of argument, you can get rid of it during the playoffs, right?
Mhm.
If you really want. Same with like the ghost runner in extra innings, right? But I think it would help trainers tremendously to have that sort of regimented schedule to say, okay, this is the rest and recovery period. I can map this out. I can schedule this out and say, day one, we're doing this. Day two, we're doing this. Immediately after the start, we're doing this. All this kind of stuff, right? Just having that predictability. And again, protecting these guys from themselves because unless their arm falls off, they're going to say that they're good to go. And it's the little stuff like their fastball's down by 2 ticks or they're not commanding the ball like they usually would. All this kind of stuff, right? And it can genuinely ruin a guy's career for trying to pitch through this stuff and trying to be a gamer, which I applaud and I respect, but it's just not sustainable. Right? Imagine what baseball would be like if Randy Johnson and Nolan Ryan and all these guys were missing a year, you know, like every 4 or 5 years probably. Like
Where would the Red Sox organization, I guess, be in terms of hype when if Pedro got down in '99?
yeah, exactly. So, I mean that's I think that's the point. Like that's the 1A 1B solution, that
You know, I think you kind of want Cam to be on the IL though, and that's kind of
I don't
disgraceful.
though cuz he's good for the game.
No, I
I,
think
I
you do.
want I
Your
want there to
personal
be as
bias is getting
many.
in the way.
I want there look as with every Yankees player. I want them to be over infinity against the Red Sox. I want them to have an infinity ERA against the Red Sox. But everywhere else they go, I don't mind if they're superstars. Like I like Aaron Judge as a player as a global concept, not him playing for the Yankees specifically. But I would rather have an Aaron Judge than, I'd rather have a Cam Schlittler who's in his first full year looking like an absolute dog and a Cy Young winner rather than, you know, a guy who looks promising and then goes on the IL immediately.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just me though.
All right. Well, I don't believe you, but that's okay.
Yeah. Anything else to add, Maxwell?
I think we talked about it all, Francis. I think we're all looking forward to. I'm sure you are. I'm sure you got your rants ready for Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully they're good, positive rants. I think the Sox have a chance against the Royals, and I think the Phillies will continue their winning ways. So we're going to be much more cuckoo crazy. Uh, I tried to do that a few times, but we barely mentioned the Red Sox and Phillies, so we were on
Yeah,
our
we're
best
saving all that
behavior.
juicy material for Thursday, Max. And I've seen quite a few statistics that are gonna make me blow my gap. Just you know,
Stay tuned. Stay tuned on Thursday,
stay
folks.
tuned to see a man's head explode on Thursday.
All right. Well, we may have to censor it, but I mean, all right.
I'll have to replace that jersey with a nice red one.
Okay, that's a bit too dark. Let's think more positive to end the podcast.
The Red Sox have
Yeah,
traded
Gavin
Julio
Sheets is going to
Urias.
continue what he's doing. I think if the Padres win that series against the Dodgers, I think that's going to be really exciting. I don't think it's going to make the Dodgers sweat necessarily. I don't think anything makes the Dodgers sweat, but anything just to get a little edge over the new sort of evil umpire. I mean, these guys are not evil at all. This is just obviously it's a Yankees reference. But if they do get a leg up on him at some point, I think that's going to be kind of fun to watch because we all expected the Dodgers should just run away with that division. The fact that the Padres in that bullpen, led by Mason Miller, is just leading the charge right now is pretty fun. I hope the White Sox continue. Another team that we really didn't discuss on, but we will, maybe next week. Spoiler alert: the Guardians are looking quite well too. The AL Central is looking like a fun team. Um, Happy to see the Rays be in front of the Yankees in the division now. I don't think a lot of people expected that. Quite frankly, I hope the Rays continue this. I think it's fun to see postseason baseball in Tampa Bay. Do they get that far? No, but they're still a great team to watch nonetheless. So a lot of fun things are happening in baseball. A lot of exciting things. It's only going to be uphill from here. Maybe we're only we're close. We're reaching closer to that All Star game, so it'd be fun to maybe we could do a live. Let's vote on who we want to put on their All Star
Absolutely,
game.
that's what I'm looking
Um,
forward to.
so I think that'd be fun, and
I
maybe
love the All Star game personally. Like I
and
love first time voters. I love guys that have been there a billion times. I love all that stuff.
And I think, too, maybe we could do some games where we go to outside of the Red Sox and
Mm.
Phillies that we go to minor leagues and say, hey, this is who I like seeing on the
Find a
Fisher
nice
Cats or
quiet
the Sea
corner
Dogs.
in Portland. And just press
Or,
record.
or yeah, maybe we're hanging out at the Sam Adams porch deck at
Mm.
the Fisher Cats Stadium, Northeast Delta Dental. Shout out, that's a great stadium. Been going there for years, and they know it's a high class facility they got. Fisher Cats are always fun. So we got some ideas, we got some intriguing ideas. So we shall see how it works out, but it's gonna be fun.
Absolutely. Um, and on a positive, I love Justin Slayton, and I'm happy he's back.
Yes, sir.
All right, we will see you guys in the next episode of the Red Sox Phillies podcast. Title pending. I think there's probably a more creative name than that, but we'll think about it, and we'll maybe we'll have something this Thursday. But I can't wait to bring the energy. I can't wait to feel it. I can't wait to rage. I can't wait to listen to you gloat, and we can exchange some stories from our childhood, perhaps, and it'll all sort of come full circle in the end. But until
That's
then,
right.
thanks for tuning in. We'll see you.